The chandelier lights inside the Plaza Hotel shimmered like frozen stars, casting sharp reflections across the ballroom's polished marble. Every guest that evening belonged to the upper crust of Manhattan's financial world: hedge fund titans, venture capital sharks, tech billionaires. And in the center of that glittering sea stood Chase Donovan, the man who believed he owned the room. Beside him, trying to steady her breathing, was Madeline Brooks, his wife, his silent partner, the woman who once rebuilt entire data sets from nothing but broken scraps of information. She wore a navy dress that fit modestly, her posture slightly tilted to her right side, a habit she developed after the accident that damaged her left ear years ago. Most people never noticed. Chase did, and he weaponized it whenever he wanted to remind her of her place. Tonight, before a panel of investors whose signatures could transform careers, Chase decided to humiliate her. As Grant Ashford, the CEO of Ashford Capital, settled into his seat, Chase tapped his Mont Blanc pen against a champagne flute. "Ladies and gentlemen," Chase announced loudly, "before we begin, I'd like to introduce the woman who, well, keeps the spreadsheets neat and tidy." A few polite chuckles rose from the audience. Madeline froze. She had spent months building the forecasting model for this deal, running simulations on her MacBook Pro late into the night, while Chase took credit. But spreadsheets neat and tidy? That wasn't a slip. It was an attack. Chase rested a hand on her shoulder, squeezing a little too tightly. "She tries her best," he added with a smile meant to appear affectionate. "But let's be honest, Madeline's not exactly boardroom material." The laughter was louder this time. Madeline blinked hard as the room blurred. She could see Grant Ashford watching her, not with pity, but with a deep, startled attention, as if he sensed something was terribly off. Chase continued, "In fact, if any of you have questions, direct them to me. Madeline gets flustered easily." He leaned in closer, whispering just loud enough for those near them to hear. "Remember, sweetheart, stay quiet unless spoken to." Her stomach twisted. The humiliation sliced deeper because it came from the man who vowed to protect her. And somewhere inside, something small but vital cracked. Still, she forced herself to stand there, fists curled at her sides. She reminded herself she couldn't afford a scene, not now. Not with her little brother barely clinging to his parole agreement, not with rent and medical bills piling up, not with Chase controlling every cent in their shared accounts. Chase lifted his glass. "To the future of Valion Tech," he declared triumphantly. But just as he turned back to the investors, a notification flashed across Madeline's phone screen, an email with a strange watermark she had never seen before, sent by someone she never expected. And when she opened it, her entire world shifted. What she saw would become the first crack in Chase Donovan's empire. Madeline Brooks had never belonged to ballrooms like the Plaza. She came from a quiet, struggling corner of Dayton, Ohio, where her mother worked double shifts at a nursing home and her father fixed trucks behind a run-down auto shop. Money was always tight. Dreams had to be practical. And silence. Silence was a survival tool in a house where arguments spread faster than warmth. But Madeline always had a mind for patterns. Numbers made sense when life didn't. At 16, she entered a regional math competition with a borrowed calculator and beat students from schools with resources she could only imagine. Her victory photo, wearing a faded hoodie, clutching a cheap plastic trophy, still sat in an old shoebox under her bed. Then the accident happened. At 29, on her way home from an overnight shift at a data center, a truck slid on black ice and hit her car. She survived, but the collision damaged the hearing in her left ear. Doctors said she'd adapt. But in crowded rooms, voices felt like a storm of echoes she had to fight through. She learned to tilt her head, to smile, to pretend everything was normal. Her resilience caught the attention of recruiters, and somehow she ended up in New York, first at a cubicle in Midtown, then gradually rising through the data world. She didn't know how impressive she was. She never had time to know. And then she met Chase Donovan. Chase was charming in the way expensive suits can blind you. Confident, smooth, promising protection and stability. He told her she was brilliant, but a little fragile. He offered help, then slowly taught her to rely on him. He made her believe she needed him, emotionally, financially, socially. That was before she learned what manipulation looked like, before the gaslighting, before he told colleagues she was sensitive and needed him to handle the important decisions. Before he took her ideas, her research, her hours of unpaid overtime, and presented them as his own. Still, she stayed. Not because she was weak, but because survival sometimes means choosing the quieter battlefield. Her brother's addiction, medical debts, Chase controlling every account. She thought enduring was the only way forward. Until the email at the plaza lit up her screen, and the sender's name made her breath stop. It was someone she never expected to hear from again, someone who knew Chase's darkest secret. From the outside, Chase Donovan looked like the perfect husband, generous, polished, successful, the kind of man who drove a Mercedes S-Class through Manhattan morning traffic as if he owned every lane, the kind of man who kissed his wife's forehead while whispering, "Don't worry, I've got us." And for a while, Madeline believed it. But every luxury came with a hidden cost. Their penthouse in Tribeca was breathtaking. Floor-to-ceiling windows, a marble kitchen island, a view that stretched across the Hudson River. Yet it felt less like a home and more like a museum curated by Chase. He controlled every decision. Which friends they saw, what vacations they took, even the brand of coffee Madeline was allowed to buy. If she brought home anything he hadn't approved, he'd smile tightly and say, "Sweetheart, let me guide you. You don't always see the big picture." At first, she mistook that for care. Later, she recognized the quiet suffocation. The gaslighting crept in slowly. "You're imagining things. You're too sensitive. You must have misheard because of your ear." Every disagreement became her fault. Every concern was overreacting. When Madeline pulled away emotionally, he doubled down with affection in public, making her look ungrateful if she ever tried to speak up. And in the office, it was worse. He praised her skills behind closed doors, then belittled her in meetings. He forwarded her reports to executives with his signature at the bottom. If she hesitated, he'd lean close and whisper, "I'm helping your career. Don't make this harder than it needs to be." The company believed she was lucky to have him guiding her, a narrative Chase encouraged. He positioned himself as the visionary leader with a brilliant but fragile wife at his side. The truth was much darker. Madeline paid medical bills for her brother in secret. Chase monitored their accounts so strictly she sometimes skipped meals just to avoid raising suspicion. She had no financial independence, no emotional place to breathe. Yet somehow, she kept going. Because survival wasn't always loud. It was steady, quiet persistence. Still, things weren't adding up. Chase was leaving earlier, coming home later, changing passcodes, and guarding his phone like a vault. But the real danger wasn't his lies. It was the growing sense that Madeline was being prepared, gently, methodically, for something far worse. And everything became clear the night she followed him into his office after hours, and discovered she wasn't the only woman who had a key. The building was nearly empty when Madeline stepped off the elevator, the soft hum of fluorescent lights echoing down the corridor of Valion Tech's executive floor. It was past 10 p.m., long after most employees had left, but Chase's office lights were still on, a glowing square of gold at the end of the hall. He'd told her earlier he needed to review board materials. But something inside her felt wrong. For weeks, his schedule didn't match his explanations. His calendar was full of blocked entries. His tone had shifted, too polished, too rehearsed. Madeline moved quietly, her boots clicking softly against the polished floor. She passed rows of dark glass offices, each reflecting her silhouette, small, tired, unsure. She gripped the folder in her hand, the one containing the forecasting model she had rebuilt for the third time that week, because Chase insisted her numbers were off. But they weren't off. He needed them to appear off. When she reached his door, she froze. It was cracked open. A woman's laugh, Soft, breathy, drifted out. Tara Montgomery, Chase's assistant. Madeline's heart dropped into her stomach. Inside, Tara leaned over Chase's desk, her hand resting on a stack of confidential documents. Chase stood behind her, uncomfortably close. The angle of his posture, the smirk on his face, it was the kind of expression he used to reserve for Madeline. She felt her breath leave her body, but she didn't walk in. Instead, she pressed closer to the wall, listening. "Relax," Chase murmured. "As long as Madeline doesn't screw up the pitch, the investors will never know. She's predictable. She'll take the blame if anything goes wrong." Tara tensed. "And if she doesn't?" Chase laughed quietly. "She will. She always does." Madeline's throat burned. Tara lowered her voice further. "You think she's figured out the data discrepancy?" Data discrepancy? Madeline's mind sharpened. Chase dismissed the question with a shrug. "She's smart, but she lacks instinct. If something doesn't make sense, she'll assume it's her mistake. That's why she's useful." Useful, not valued, not loved. A pawn. Tara hesitated, then opened a drawer Madeline had never been allowed to access. Inside lay files stamped with a red label, unauthorized financial model. Internal use only. Madeline's pulse spiked. She knew every model Valion Tech produced. This wasn't one of them. Chase nodded toward the file. "Once we secure the investment, we'll phase her out." Quietly. Phase her out. Her entire career, her life, erased like she was nothing. Tara swallowed hard. "Does she know you changed the numbers?" Madeline's knees nearly buckled. Changed the numbers? Her model, her work, her reputation? She stumbled back, heart pounding, vision blurring, because suddenly she understood. Chase wasn't just cheating on her, he was setting her up, and tomorrow's investor meeting was the trap designed to destroy her. Madeline spent the rest of the night in a fog, moving through the halls of Valion Tech like a ghost clinging to the last strands of her sanity. When dawn broke over Manhattan, she was already seated outside the boardroom on the 42nd floor, her laptop open, her hands trembling as she reviewed her data for the 100th time. Today was the day Chase planned to sacrifice her. Across the room, executives chatted over espresso and pastries, their reflections shimmering across the glass walls. None of them noticed her pale face or the panic hiding behind her steady gaze. They only knew her as Chase's wife, the quiet one, the one who didn't cause trouble. But one man noticed. Grant Ashford entered the boardroom with the calm authority of someone used to billion-dollar decisions. His charcoal suit, his measured steps, the way he scanned the room, it was clear he didn't miss much, and he definitely didn't miss Madeline. He paused beside her. "Rough morning?" he asked gently. She stiffened. "Just tired." "You're more than tired." His eyes held hers. "You're scared." Her breath caught. No one ever said things like that to her, honestly, directly, without judgment. Before she could reply, Chase swept into the room, wearing his tailored confidence like a crown. "Grant, glad you made it. We're all excited to walk you through the projections." Grant didn't smile. He kept his gaze fixed on Madeline. "Will your wife be presenting?" he asked. The question made Chase's jaw tighten. Madeline, no. She's here for support. Madeline felt the words like a slap, but Grant didn't look away. "I'd actually prefer to hear the data from the person who built it." The room went silent. Chase chuckled a little too loudly. "She's not ready for something like this. Numbers confuse her under pressure." Madeline's cheeks burned, but Grant's expression didn't waver. "Is that true?" he asked her. She opened her mouth, but Chase cut in sharply. "Grant, trust me. I know my wife." Grant replied calmly, "I prefer to let people speak for themselves." For a moment, Madeline considered staying quiet like she always had. But the memory of the red-stamped file, the whispered plan to erase her, and the betrayal in Chase's voice pushed her forward. She inhaled. "I can present the model." Chase's eyes went cold. Grant nodded once, approvingly. "Good. Then let's begin." And just as Madeline stood to follow them inside, her phone buzzed. A new email, same strange watermark, same sender. This time, the message contained a file that could destroy Chase Donovan forever. New York looked unforgiving in winter, the kind of cold that didn't just bite. It sank into your bones, reminding you how small you were against glass towers and rushing crowds. After the meeting ended, after she somehow held her composure while Chase tightened his grip on the narrative, Madeline stepped outside Valley on Tech feeling like the sky had collapsed on her shoulders. She clutched a Starbucks cup between her palms, letting the steam warm her numb fingers. Trucks rolled past on Madison Avenue, splashing slush across the sidewalk. People hurried by, wrapped in coats and purpose. No one noticed the woman standing still in the middle of the city's endless motion. She tried to breathe, but every inhale felt thin. Every exhale felt like defeat. The email from the mysterious sender burned in her mind. The attached file, a mirror of her financial model, except the numbers were tampered with. Someone had altered projections weeks before the pitch. Someone had made her look incompetent. Someone wanted her to fall, and she knew exactly who. Chase had prepared a trap elegant enough to fool the board, but sloppy enough for someone on the inside armed to send warnings. The watermark symbol, 3 intersecting lines, meant nothing to her, but the sender's initials at the bottom made her stomach twist. TM Tara Montgomery. Why would Chase's mistress warn her? Why now? A gust of icy wind whipped past, making her wince. Her left ear, still sensitive from the accident years ago, throbbed painfully. Childhood memories flashed before her eyes. The nights she spent studying math under a broken lamp. The mornings her mother told her, "If you want something in life, Maddie, you'll have to fight harder than most." She had fought. Harder than anyone knew. But today she felt like she had nothing left. Her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number lit the screen. "You don't deserve what he's doing. Meet me tonight. Alley behind the River Cafe, 8 p.m. Come alone." Her pulse kicked up. The River Cafe. Brooklyn Bridge, waterfront. Upscale. Impossible to forget. Not the kind of place someone chose casually. She whispered to herself, "Why there? Why me?" Then another message arrived. "Please, I'm risking everything to help you." Madeline stared at the glowing screen, heart racing, because the person texting her wasn't Tara. It was someone far more dangerous, and they knew the truth about Chase Donovan. The River Cafe glittered under the Brooklyn Bridge like a secret tucked beneath a city that never slept. Its windows glowed a warm amber, spilling light onto the cold waterfront. Madeline didn't go inside. Instead, she waited in the narrow alley behind the restaurant, where the hum of traffic mixed with the soft lap of the East River. Her breath formed pale clouds in the air. She pulled her coat tighter. 8:03 p.m. Whoever had messaged her was late. Footsteps echoed. Madeline turned sharply, heart hammering, only to see a delivery worker pass by with crates of produce. She exhaled shakily. This was ridiculous. She should go home, pretend none of this happened, and figure out a way to survive tomorrow's investor meeting. But the files, the tampered numbers, the emails, all of it pointed toward something she could no longer ignore. Her phone buzzed. Another message. "Behind you." Madeline spun around. A figure stepped out of the shadows. A woman wrapped in a black wool coat, her chestnut hair tucked under a knit cap. She lifted her face just enough for the street lamp to catch her features. It wasn't Tara, not even close. The woman looked older, calmer, with eyes too tired to belong to someone working for Chase. "Who are you?" Madeline whispered. The woman extended a flash drive. "The person trying to save you." Madeline didn't take it. "Why me?" "Because you're the only one who doesn't deserve to go down for what's coming." The reply sent a chill through her. "What is this? Why did you contact me from Tara's initials?" The woman shook her head. "TM doesn't stand for Tara Montgomery. It stands for something else. Someone else." Madeline felt her pulse in her throat. "Then who? Look at the drive. the woman insisted. "It contains 3 versions of the financial model. The one you built, the one Chase altered, and the original file that links back to him." Madeline hesitated, fear tightening her chest. "Why help me? You're risking your job, maybe your life." The woman swallowed hard. "Because Chase ruined mine, and he's about to ruin yours." Madeline stepped closer. "What did he do to you?" The woman's voice cracked. "He used my research, my years of work, then erased me. You were supposed to be next." Madeline's fingers finally closed around the flash drive. Before she could speak, the woman stepped back into the darkness. "Tomorrow will expose everything," she whispered. "But be careful. Chase knows someone is leaking information." Madeline's stomach dropped. "He suspects me?" "No." A trembling pause. "He suspects me. And he's already on his way here." Madeline's pulse thundered as she slipped the flash drive into her coat pocket. The woman had already disappeared into the maze of shadows behind the River Cafe, leaving only a faint echo of her warning behind. The icy wind whipped across the East River, stinging her cheeks and forcing her to steady herself against the brick wall. Chase was coming, but how soon? And what would he do if he found the woman who had betrayed him? Madeline stepped out of the alley, joining the faint glow of the riverfront lights. Her hands trembled as she replayed the stranger's words. "He used my research. He erased me. You were supposed to be next." How many women had Chase stepped on to climb higher? How many careers had he suffocated behind closed doors while smiling for investors? She thought she knew the extent of his cruelty. Tonight proved she hadn't even begun to understand. She made her way up the cobblestone path toward the pedestrian walkway, needing space to breathe. The bridge above her glowed in soft gold, but its beauty brought little comfort. Her mind raced with questions. Why impersonate Tara's initials? Why now? What was the larger plan Chase was hiding? Her phone buzzed again. This time, it wasn't the unknown number. It was Chase. "Where are you?" Madeline's stomach knotted. She typed back quickly. "Boarding a cab home." 3 dots pulsed, then vanished, then returned. "Be home. We need to talk." A shiver crawled down her spine. The timing was too precise. Had he already found the woman? Had he guessed someone warned her? She turned toward the taxi line, only to freeze. A sleek black SUV with tinted windows rolled slowly along the street. The kind of vehicle Chase used when he wanted to handle things privately. It crept past her, stopped, then backed up a few feet. Madeline's heart lurched. No, not here. Not now. She ducked behind a delivery truck, her breath shallow and fast. She watched the SUV door open, a polished shoe stepping onto the pavement. Not Chase. Someone worse, Marcus Hale's head of corporate security, the same man rumored to clean up problems discreetly. He scanned the street with calculated precision. Madeline flattened herself against the cold metal of the truck. If he found her, the flash drive, and the truth, would vanish forever. And then the security chief turned his head, directly toward where she was hiding. Madeline held her breath as the head of corporate security scanned the street. His presence meant one thing. Chase wasn't just paranoid, he was actively hunting whoever betrayed him. And if he found her with the flash drive, she knew exactly how Chase would spin it. "My wife got confused," he'd say. "She's emotional, sensitive, unstable." He'd used those words before. People believed him. She couldn't let that happen again. The security chief's gaze swept dangerously close. His hand hovered near his earpiece, listening. Madeline stayed still until her lungs burned, then slowly slid sideways, keeping the truck between them. When he turned to speak into his radio, she slipped into the crowd of tourists walking toward the bridge, blending into the flow of bodies. Her heart raced with every step. Once she was far enough, she cut down a side street and ducked into the entrance of a tiny bookstore. Its warmth hit her like a sudden embrace, the scent of old pages, soft jazz humming from a speaker, a cashier tapping on an iPad behind the counter. She hid between two tall shelves, forcing herself to breathe, safe, for now. But the flash drive in her pocket felt like it weighed 100 pounds. She pulled it out, turning it over in her palm. It wasn't labeled. No clue to the identity of the woman who gave it to her. Only the watermark she recognized from the emailed files. That symbol again. 3 intersecting lines. She opened her phone and searched for it. At first, nothing. Then, one result. A logo from an old research division Valion Tech absorbed years ago. A division that had shut down suddenly with no explanation. A division run by a woman named Teresa Marlowe. TM. Not Tara Montgomery. Teresa Marlowe. Madeline's breath caught. Teresa had disappeared from the company overnight. Rumors said she'd been escorted out for performance issues. But executives spoke of it like a ghost story, something no one wanted to question too deeply. The woman tonight. Had that been Teresa? Madeline's pulse quickened. If Teresa had been erased, if Chase played a part in that, then the flash drive wasn't just evidence. It was a confession of everything he'd done. She stepped out from between the shelves, gripping the drive tighter. She needed to see the files now. As she walked toward the exit, her phone buzzed. A message from Tara Montgomery. "We need to talk. Right now. It's about Chase." Madeline stared at the screen, her throat tightening. Because Tara's next message would reveal a betrayal even she never saw coming. Madeline hesitated before opening Tara's message. The bookstore's warm light suddenly felt too bright, too fragile, as if the truth might shatter everything she thought she knew. She stepped outside where the night air pressed cold against her skin, grounding her as she read the next text. "I didn't warn you, but someone else did. Meet me, Grant's Tower, 32nd floor, now." Her stomach twisted. Grant Ashford? The CEO who challenged Chase during the meeting? Why would Tara be meeting him? The wind whipped through the street, scattering paper cups and loose leaves as Madeline lifted her hand to flag a taxi. She slid into the back seat, clutching the flash drive so tightly her knuckles went white. The taxi sped through the glittering Manhattan streets until the sharp silhouette of Ashford Tower rose before her, steel, glass, and a quiet power that seemed to hum through its foundation. Inside, the lobby was almost silent at this hour. Soft golden lights reflected off marble floors. The elevator doors opened with a muted chime, and she stepped in, pressing 32. As the elevator ascended, her heartbeat echoed in her ears. When the doors slid open, Tara Montgomery was pacing near a conference table. But she didn't look smug, flirtatious, or confident like she usually did around Chase. She looked terrified. "Tara?" Madeline whispered. Tara turned, eyes glassy. "You have to listen. There's something you don't know." "I know plenty," Madeline replied sharply, "like the fact Chase is setting me up to fall." Tara flinched. "I wasn't part of that, I swear. Chase lied to me too. He always does." Madeline didn't soften. "Then what are you doing here? Why involve Grant?" Tara's voice cracked. "Because Grant already knows who you are." Madeline blinked. "What does that mean?" Tara swallowed hard. "You think he noticed you today for the first time?" "No, he's known your name for 10 years. Madeline felt her pulse spike. "Why would a billionaire know me?" Tara pointed to the flash drive. "Because you saved his company, before you even knew it existed." Madeline stared at her, confused. Tara continued, trembling. 10 years ago, when you worked in that tiny data center in Ohio, you corrected a forecasting model that the entire industry was laughing at. They never told you who owned it, but that model belonged to Grant Ashford." Madeline froze. "He's been looking for you ever since." Before Madeline could speak, the elevator dinged again. The doors slid open. Grant Ashford stepped out, eyes locked on Madeline as if he'd waited a decade for this moment. Madeline stood frozen as Grant Ashford approached, the soft hum of the elevator fading behind him. The billionaire's presence filled the room with a quiet gravity, steady, deliberate, almost disarming. Tara stepped back, letting him pass, her expression tense. Grant stopped a few feet from Madeline, his gaze searching hers as if confirming something only he could see. "It really is you," he said softly. Madeline swallowed. "According to Tara, we've met before, but I don't remember you." "You wouldn't," Grant replied. 10 years ago, you were just a name on a technical forum. A username, actually. Data North Star." The room tilted slightly. No one had called her that in years. "I used that username when I worked at the data center," she whispered. Grant nodded. "You corrected a forecasting model that a dozen analysts couldn't fix. That correction saved Ashford Capital from a disastrous investment. We never knew your real identity." Madeline blinked through the shock. "But how did you connect me to that model?" "Tara," Grant said with a glance toward her, "recognized your coding patterns when Chase forwarded the altered projections to her." Tara stepped forward, wringing her hands. "Chase made me compare 2 versions of the file. I knew instantly the baseline belonged to the Data North Star style. I'd studied it years ago. When I realized it was you, I contacted Grant." Madeline's heart pounded. "So the woman behind the River Cafe wasn't you?" "No," Tara whispered. "That was Teresa Marlowe. She was the head of the research division Chase buried. She's been hiding for years, terrified of what he'd do if she resurfaced." Grant's jaw tightened. "Chase destroyed her career. He tried to do the same to you, and he's not done." "So you've known about Chase?" Madeline asked. "Yes," Grant replied, "but until tonight I didn't know he was targeting you personally." Madeline stepped back, overwhelmed by the weight of a past she didn't know she had. "Why are you helping me?" Grant looked at her with a sincerity that cut through the chaos. "Because talent like yours deserves protection, not exploitation, and because I owe you a debt I never repaid." Tara's phone buzzed suddenly, her face drained of color. "He knows," she whispered. "Chase, he knows we're together." Madeline's pulse spiked. "How?" Tara turned the screen toward them. A message from Chase flashed brightly. "Where are you, all 3 of you?" And then another message appeared, this one with a photo of Madeline entering the building moments earlier. Madeline felt the blood drain from her face as she stared at the photo Chase had just sent. It showed her stepping into Ashford Tower, alone, clearly identifiable. The timestamp was only minutes old. Chase wasn't guessing. He was tracking her. Tara took a shaky step backward. He must have accessed the building's security feed. He's done it before. When he thinks someone's hiding something. Grant's jaw tightened, but his voice stayed level. "We don't have much time. He's escalating." Madeline's hand trembled as she lowered Tara's phone. "If he knows we're together, that means he knows there's evidence against him." Tara nodded. "And he won't let you walk into tomorrow's investor meeting with that flash drive." Grant moved toward the conference table, pulling out a thin MacBook Pro and sliding it toward Madeline. "Plug it in. We need to see what we're dealing with." Madeline hesitated only a second before inserting the flash drive. The screen lit up instantly. 3 folders, each labeled with dates spanning the last 12 months. Tara's breath hitched. "Those are the restricted files, the ones Chase kept hidden. Teresa must have stolen them before he forced her out." Madeline opened the first folder. A spreadsheet filled the screen, her forecasting model, the one she'd built from scratch. Except the numbers were clean, consistent, mathematically sound. Her version, the one she recognized as hers. The second file showed Chase's alterations, manipulated variables, falsified growth curves, inflated projections that would mislead any investor into pouring millions into a doomed expansion. And the third, Madeline clicked it open. A document appeared. Signed approvals, backdated memos, internal messages. direct evidence proving Chase intentionally falsified data and framed others to cover his tracks. Tara wiped a tear off her cheek. Teresa lost her job because she refused to sign one of those memos, so he made her disappear. Grant's voice hardened. This is enough to take him down, not just professionally, legally. Madeline's breath trembled. But if he finds out I have this, Grant met her eyes. He won't, not if you trust me. She swallowed hard. Trust. It wasn't a language she'd spoken in years. Before she could answer, the lights in the conference room flickered. Once. Twice. Then the entire floor went dark, plunging them into shadows. Tara gasped. He's here. The elevator dinged down the hall, slow, heavy, deliberate. And the silhouette stepping out looked unmistakably like Chase Donovan. The outline of Chase Donovan emerged from the dim elevator light like a predator slipping out of the dark. His suit was immaculate, his jaw clenched, his eyes sharp enough to slice through shadows. Madeline's breath hitched as he stepped forward, each footstep echoing with a controlled fury she knew too well. Tara instinctively moved behind Grant, trembling. Grant didn't flinch. He stood between Chase and the two women, shoulders squared, voice cold. This floor was locked. How did you get in? Chase smirked. I have access to every inch of this city, especially places my wife shouldn't be. His gaze locked onto Madeline. You lied to me. Madeline fought to steady her breathing. I left to clear my head. No, Chase said, stepping closer. You left to meet someone who sent you files that don't belong to you. The room tightened around her like a closing fist. Tara spoke boldly, too boldly. You can't intimidate her anymore, Chase. Chase's eyes snapped to her. Careful, Tara. You're already in deeper than you think. Grant stepped forward. You're trespassing and you're done giving orders. Whatever control you had ends tonight. Chase laughed, a sound that held no humor. You think you know what's happening, Ashford? You think my wife is some innocent victim? His voice dropped, dripping venom. She's weak. She always has been. That's why she needed me. Madeline flinched, but Grant's tone turned steel. You underestimate her. That's your first mistake. Chase ignored him, focusing solely on Madeline. You think running to Grant will save you? You think exposing those files will protect you? He leaned in, voice low. Those documents are meaningless without context, and everyone at Valion knows you're unstable. Who do you think they'll believe? The old fear twisted inside her like a wound reopening. His words were designed to break her, the way they always had. But something was different tonight. Grant's presence, Tara's trembling courage, the flash drive burning in her pocket. Madeline held Chase's stare. I'm not afraid of you anymore. For the first time, Chase's confidence cracked. Grant crossed his arms. Leave. Now. Before this gets worse. Chase tilted his head, studying the three of them. If you think you've won anything tonight, you're wrong. He tapped his phone. Tomorrow morning, the board will hear my version first. Madeline's heart slammed against her ribs. Chase's smile widened. And by then, he whispered, your evidence will be gone. Because at that exact moment, alarms began blaring. Someone was wiping the building's servers clean. The alarms blared through Ashford Tower, sharp and metallic, bouncing off the glass walls like a warning meant for someone far more dangerous than any of them. Madeline's heart pounded as red emergency lights flickered, painting everything in frantic flashes. Tara gasped. He's wiping the system. Chase must have triggered a purge protocol. Grant swore under his breath. Of course he did. Cowards burn evidence when they can't control the narrative. Chase smirked, hands in his pockets as if he were enjoying the chaos. Did you really think I'd let a flash drive undo everything I built? Madeline stepped forward, anger cutting through her fear. You didn't build anything. You stole. You manipulated. You buried people. Chase's expression sharpened. And you'll join them if you're not careful. But Grant wasn't listening to Chase anymore. He was watching the ceiling, tracking the emergency lights. His voice shifted, calmer, more commanding. "We need to get to my secure floor," he said. "It's offline from the main network. The purge can't touch it." Tara looked panicked. "But the elevators—" "Manual override," Grant said, already moving toward the private stairwell. "Madeline, with me." Madeline sprinted after him, Chase's footsteps echoing behind them like a coming storm. Tara followed, her breath shaking. The stairwell door slammed shut as Grant hit the override panel, locking it behind them. They climbed, but Chase wasn't done. The stairwell lights flickered, then dimmed, then went completely dark. Tara screamed. Madeline grabbed the railing, her ears filled with the sound of her pulse. Grant's voice cut through the darkness. "Don't move! I have a light!" A beam from his phone illuminated the narrow steps, casting long shadows. "Keep going," he commanded. "We're almost there." But halfway up the flight, the door they'd locked below clicked loudly. Not possible, unless Chase had another way in. Madeline froze. "Grant, someone's coming." From below, footsteps ascended, slow, deliberate, echoing like a countdown. Grant lowered his voice. He bypassed the lock. "Move." They pushed upward, breathless, turning into the hallway that led to Grant's secure floor. He swiped his ID against a biometric panel. The door opened a few inches, then jammed. Grant tried again. Nothing. Tara's voice cracked. "He hacked the lock. He's locking us out." Footsteps drew closer, echoing up from the darkness. Madeline looked behind them. A silhouette appeared at the bottom of the stairs. It wasn't Chase. It was the head of security, armed, advancing, and he wasn't coming to protect them. The head of security climbed the final steps with the slow precision of a man who knew exactly how much power he held. His expression was flat, unreadable, the dim stairwell light casting sharp lines across his face. Madeline's breath caught as he reached their level. Grant stepped in front of both women. "Derek, move aside." Derek didn't blink. "I can't do that, Mr. Ashford." Tara clutched the railing. "Chase sent you?" Derek didn't answer. He didn't need to. The silence said everything. Madeline's fingers tightened around the flash drive in her pocket. If Derek seized it, everything, every file, every truth, would vanish into Chase's cover-up. Grant tilted his body slightly, shielding Madeline further. "This isn't you," Grant said, voice low but firm. "You've worked for me for 8 years. You know who I am, and you know what Chase is." Derek's jaw flickered, a tiny crack in his resolve. "He paid off my brother's medical debt," Derek muttered. "He said you were trying to frame him." Madeline stepped forward before Grant could stop her. "Derek, look at me." He hesitated, just enough. "You know Chase," she said. "You've seen how he treats the people under him. You think he paid your brother's bills out of kindness? He owns you now. That's what he does. He traps people." Derek's breath hitched. Not much, but enough to show her words hit home. Madeline pressed on. "You're not saving him. You're burying yourself." Grant added quietly, "And Chase doesn't save anyone but Chase." Derek closed his eyes. For a moment, the hallway was nothing but the sound of the city wind pressing against the windows. Then, he raised his radio. Madeline's heart plummeted. But instead of calling Chase, Derek spoke into the device. "Stand down, floor's empty." Grant exhaled sharply. Relief flickered across Tara's face. Derek stepped aside without another word and walked back down the stairs, leaving them alone in the half-dark. Grant immediately swiped his ID again. The secured door clicked open at last. They rushed inside. The floor was a stark contrast to the chaos below. Quiet, temperature-controlled, walls lined with servers humming like a heartbeat. Grant moved quickly to a sleek steel console. "Give me the drive," he said. Madeline handed it over. He inserted it into the protected terminal. Files loaded, slowly, but unmistakably onto the isolated system. Tara let out a shaky breath. "We made it." But Grant's expression shifted, eyes narrowing at something on the screen. Madeline stepped closer. "What is it?" He pointed at a single line of text buried deep inside the metadata, created by C.D. Chase Donovan. Because the file on the drive wasn't Teresa Marlowe's work at all, it was Chase's personal ledger of crimes. The screen glowed with Chase's initials, C.D., staring back like a signature carved into stone. Madeline's stomach dropped, and Tara covered her mouth, stunned. Grant leaned closer, scrolling through the metadata with deliberate precision, as if confirming the impossible. "These files," Grant murmured. "They aren't just altered forecasts. They're a full record of misappropriated funds, forged approvals, and falsified projections. This is his personal ledger." Madeline's pulse throbbed in her ears. Why would Chase keep something like this? Grant's jaw tightened. Because men like him think they're untouchable. They keep trophies of their corruption. It feeds their ego. Tara shook her head. But if he stored everything, then the purge he triggered downstairs. "Can't touch this floor," Grant finished, which means Chase can't bury it anymore. Madeline stared at the entries, names, dates, amounts, signatures. She recognized several executives who had mysteriously resigned over the years. She remembered rumors about performance problems and internal issues. But now, the truth was laid bare. Chase sabotaged them all. Every downfall had been engineered, every firing, every ruined reputation, including hers. Her hand trembled as she reached toward the screen. "He planned to add me next." Grant gently caught her wrist. "Not anymore." She swallowed hard. The truth was liberating and terrifying at the same time. Chase had built an entire empire on calculated destruction, and she had nearly been his final casualty. Tara paced anxiously near the window. "So what now if he finds out we access this?" "He already knows." Grant didn't sugarcoat it. The purge wasn't about erasing data. It was designed to flush out whoever held the backup. Madeline inhaled sharply. "So, we triggered the trap," Grant nodded. "And now we use it against him." He pulled out his phone and typed rapidly, sending encrypted copies of the files to multiple secure destinations. "These documents will be mirrored across several legal networks. Chase can't destroy what he no longer controls." Tara exhaled shakily. "Does this mean he's finished?" Grant looked at her, then at Madeline. "Not yet. Tomorrow morning he'll walk into that boardroom thinking he still owns the narrative." Madeline met his gaze. "And we'll be ready." But before Grant could respond, the office lights snapped off. Emergency backup kicked in with a jolt. A voice echoed through the floor's intercom, chilling and unmistakable. "Madeline, Grant, I know you're in there." It was Chase, and he wasn't alone. Chase's voice slithered through the intercom, cold and theatrical, as if he were savoring every syllable. "Step away from the terminals," he warned. "You don't know what you're playing with." Madeline's pulse spiked. Tara pressed herself against the glass wall, eyes wide. Grant stood firmly between them and the door, jaw tight, shoulders squared. "Stay calm," he whispered. "He can't override the security lock from outside." But a metallic click echoed through the room, then another, then the soft hum of a manual override. Madeline's breath caught. "He has physical access." Grant stiffened. "He shouldn't." Chase's footsteps began, slow, methodical, approaching the secure office like a man strolling into a victory he believed was guaranteed. Tara shook her head in disbelief. "He planned for this. He planned for everything." "No," Grant muttered. "Not everything." He quickly unplugged the flash drive from the terminal, slipping it into his inner jacket pocket. Madeline caught the move and exhaled shakily. The evidence was safe, for now. The footsteps stopped on the other side of the door. A shadow passed under the narrow gap. "Madeline," Chase drawled, "open the door. Let's talk like adults." She stepped forward, anger rising through her fear. "Adults don't hide crimes in private ledgers." Silence, then a sharp laugh. "You don't know what you're doing," he snapped. "Do you think Grant's gonna save you?" He's been waiting for a chance like this to steal my company and use you to do it." Grant's face hardened, but he didn't speak. He didn't need to. Madeline already recognized the familiar tactic: divide, confuse, isolate, Chase's favorite game. She stepped up beside Grant. "I'm done believing you." A heavy thud hit the door. The whole frame trembled. Chase wasn't trying to talk anymore. He was trying to break in. "Tara," Grant ordered, "back up, get behind the desk." Madeline grabbed Tara's arm, pulling her into cover as another slam shook the lock. Grant moved closer to the door, ready to hold it if necessary. "Madeline," Chase roared, "open this damn door before I—" He didn't finish. A blaring alarm erupted overhead, louder than before. Not the purge alarm, a different one. Grant's eyes widened. "That's the federal alert," he said. "Someone else accessed the files remotely." Madeline's heart dropped. "Who?" Grant stared at the flashing red lights. "Someone with clearance higher than mine." And then a new voice boomed through the building speakers, announcing the arrival of the SEC. For a moment, no one moved. The red emergency lights pulsed across the secure floor as the new voice echoed through the building speakers, firm, authoritative, unmistakably federal. "This is the Securities and Exchange Commission. All personnel must remain where they are." Madeline's heart hammered. Tara covered her mouth, eyes shining with disbelief. Grant exhaled slowly, shoulders finally relaxing. "It's over," he murmured. "Chase can't talk his way out of this." A savage crash hit the door from the other side. Chase had gone silent, but his rage spoke through every hit. Grant motioned Madeline and Tara back. "Stay behind me." Another crash. Then, a harsh metallic command from the hallway. "Mr. Donovan, step back from the door, hands where we can see them." The banging stopped. Madeline held her breath. She could almost picture Chase now, cornered, seething, unable to charm or threaten his way out. His empire, built on intimidation and forged numbers, was finally collapsing. Grant opened the secure door just enough for the agents to enter. 2 SEC officers swept in, badges raised, voices steady and unhurried. "We have duplicated the files from the mirrored servers," one officer announced. "The evidence is overwhelming." Madeline felt her knees soften with relief. Tara let out the breath she'd been holding. "Teresa did it," she whispered. "She must have sent the files to the SEC too." Madeline's throat tightened. The woman in the alley, frightened, shaking but brave, had finally been heard. Agents escorted Chase into view. Madeline froze. He looked different, small. Anger still flickered in his eyes, but it no longer had anywhere to go. "You think this is justice?" he hissed at her. "You think they'll believe you weren't part of it?" Madeline stepped forward, voice steady. "I don't need to convince anyone. Your files spoke for you." Chase lunged, but 2 agents restrained him instantly. His screams echoed down the hallway as they forced his hands behind his back, cuffing him with cold, unceremonious clicks. Grant turned to Madeline, his voice soft but sure. "You're safe now." For the first time in months, she believed it. The agents led Chase toward the elevator. Tara wiped her eyes. Madeline closed hers, letting the moment settle in her bones. The city that had ignored her suffering finally heard the truth. But just as she felt the weight lift, an agent approached. "Miss Brooks," he said quietly, "there's something else." Madeline opened her eyes. "Your name appears in the files too, and you'll want to see why." Madeline followed the SEC agent into a quieter corner of the secure floor, her pulse still unsteady. Tara and Grant stayed behind, watching anxiously. The agent handed her a tablet. "Your name appears multiple times in Donovan's ledgers," he said, "but not the way you fear." Madeline hesitated, then scrolled through the document. Her breath caught. There it was, her name, stamped repeatedly beside altered projections and false signatures. But the signatures next to her name weren't hers. They were forged, Every line was proof that Chase had used her identity as a shield, a decoy, a convenient scapegoat for years. Tara's voice broke behind her. "Oh my God, he framed you long before tonight." Grant stepped closer, placing a steady hand on her shoulder. "This clears you completely." Madeline swallowed hard. For months, she'd carried the weight of self-doubt, questioning her instincts, her competence, her perception of reality. But now, seeing her name misused, twisted, and weaponized, it felt like the final chain snapping off her. "I didn't imagine it," she whispered. "Any of it." "No," Grant said softly. "You survived it." Tara wiped her eyes. "He stole your brilliance because he didn't have any of his own." The SEC agent nodded. "We'll need a statement tomorrow, but make no mistake. This document dismantles any narrative he tries to spin. You were a victim, and now you're a key witness. A witness, not an accessory, not a pawn, a force." Madeline exhaled, the air shaky but freeing. For the first time in years, she no longer felt like she was shrinking inside her own life. She felt seen. Grant motioned toward the elevator. "Let's get out of here. You need rest. Tomorrow will be a war, but one you'll win." Madeline followed him. Tara walked beside her, still shaken but relieved. When the elevator doors closed, the city lights glittered below them, Manhattan glowing like a promise she had never dared to believe she deserved. As the elevator descended, Grant spoke quietly. "Madeline, after this is over, there's something I want to offer you." She looked up. "A job?" He smiled faintly. "More than that." Her heart skipped, unexpected, unsure. She looked away, watching the reflection of their silhouettes against the golden lights of the city she once thought she wasn't worthy of. But before Grant could say anything more, the elevator stopped. Not on the ground floor, on the lobby, where a crowd of reporters waited, and every camera turned toward Madeline as the doors slid open. The elevator doors parted and a wall of camera flashes exploded in front of Madeline, white, blinding, relentless. Reporters surged forward, shouting her name, microphones stretched like reaching hands. "Ms. Brooks, did you know about the fraud? Were you involved? Are you the whistleblower? Is Chase Donovan being charged?" Madeline froze for half a heartbeat. Once this kind of attention would have crushed her. Once she would have shrunk behind Chase, letting him twist her silence into guilt. But tonight, after everything, she lifted her chin. Grant stepped subtly beside her, offering support without overshadowing her. Tara held her breath, eyes wide with pride and worry. Madeline moved forward. "I was never part of Chase Donovan's crimes," she said, her voice steady, carrying over the noise. "I was one of his victims, and thanks to the SEC, the truth is finally coming out." Flashes burst again. The crowd leaned in. She continued. "For years, Chase used my name, my work, and the trust of employees to cover his lies. But people stood up. People who refused to stay silent. That's why we're here now." She saw Tara's eyes glisten. She saw Grant's subtle nod. A reporter shouted, "What happens next for you, Miss Brooks?" Madeline inhaled, the deepest breath she'd taken in years. "I rebuild," she said simply, "on my terms." Security escorted them through the lobby and into the crisp night air. The chaos faded behind them. The city hummed softly, a gentler sound than she ever remembered. On the sidewalk, Grant turned to her. "There's something I didn't finish telling you earlier." She looked up, heart thudding. "Your offer." He nodded. "I'd like you to lead our new data intelligence division. Build it from the ground up. Total autonomy. Your vision." Madeline blinked, overwhelmed. "Grant, that's..." "And," he added softly, "when you're ready. I'd like to see where this goes. You and me. No pressure, just honesty." Warmth spread through her. Slow, steady, real. She smiled. "I think I'd like that." Tara laughed through her tears. "You deserve every bit of this, Madeline." The three of them stood there for a moment, framed by the Manhattan skyline, lights glittering like they too were celebrating her freedom. Madeline glanced at the sky, whispering to herself, "I made it." Not because someone saved her, not because someone handed her a future, because she fought for it, because she finally believed she deserved one. And as she walked toward the waiting car, Grant at her side, Tara close behind, Madeline Brooks stepped into a life that finally belonged to her. So, that's the end of our story. And if you are still here, listening with me until this moment, then something in Madeline's journey must have touched your heart in a way that words alone can't explain. Maybe it reminded you of a time you stayed strong when no one believed you. Maybe it whispered, "You deserve better," at exactly the right moment. You know, the Stoics used to say, "The obstacle is the way." And that's what Madeline showed us. The very things meant to break you can become the things that rebuild you. Sometimes life closes doors not to trap you, but to force you into rooms where you finally learn your worth. And there's another quote I love. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Madeline couldn't control Chase's lies, the betrayal, or the chaos, but she could control her truth, and that truth became her shield. So if you're facing something heavy, remember this. You're allowed to walk away from what hurts. You're allowed to rebuild. You're allowed to be happy again. If this story gave you even a little courage, a little hope, please like, share, and subscribe. Your support helps us create more stories that speak to the heart.